So this is nice. So we're at the Meshery CI meeting. VJ is with us. And Rodolfo, yeah, let me jump into the meeting minutes as well. There's a couple of topics to touch on.
Okay.
One topic we didn't touch on in the past, and maybe today's a good day, maybe not, is air-gapped deployments. Kind of relates. It's sort of tooling around Meshery, sort of relates to CI. It actually has an impact on CI if someone wants to take Meshery as a system and run it and have it perform all of its functionality in a physically segregated environment, like in their data center with no internet connection. Well,
Mm,
that's fine. Like we've made considerations for that in the architecture. We haven't made it. We haven't built a lot of tooling around it to make it easier to really to facilitate that. Is so right now there's manual steps for what that is, and in the future, some changes to both CI and to Meshery itself can facilitate. It can just make it easier to do that. One example is when we were to build. So let me jump into the meeting minutes so I can help with these notes.
okay.
One example is when you go to build a Meshery adapter. One of the things the adapter is capable of is lifecycle management of service meshes. And to install a service mesh, Meshery, or the adapter specifically, needs a copy of that service mesh's installation files. Like, and right now, the way that the adapters have that ability to take a cached copy. As a matter of fact, what they'll do is they'll download the bundle for Istio or for Linkerd or for whatever service mesh,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll the first time that they deploy it, then they'll cache it. And I forget how long the cache is before it expires. But it we could equally as well create create images, alternative images of each of the adapters that already have the latest, a version of each service mesh's installation files bundled into the image, so that that just makes it convenient for them to be able to deploy on-prem. That's one approach. Another approach is when you so Meshery Cloud, as one of the remote providers that you can sign into,
Mm-hmm.
that's just it's a container and a Postgres database. So it's a small service that has a Postgres database. You can take that Postgres database, you can take it and deploy it in a container. It's running containerized as a service. I mean, it's not much of a service, it's just running. And that same Docker Compose file that runs that thing, you can take and deploy locally and run Meshery on-prem, fully air-gapped.
Mm-hmm.
And so my point is, you can either bundle a service mesh's installation files inside of an adapter and pre-bake an image that has them, or, which is fine, or I should say, or in Meshery Cloud, if you're running that locally, well, part of the configuration of the adapter or of Meshery can just be, it already points to Meshery Cloud today, but it can point to that local copy, and that local copy can have all those service mesh installation files.
I see. Okay.
That might be like the problem with bundling installation files inside of each adapter is that, well, depending upon how big those files are, you might only want to bundle one copy of that, one version of that service mesh. And so if they were working with a version that you didn't bundle, well, then they go back to the manual process of like loading it into the file system themselves. And okay, well, also if they're running Meshery for a long time, eventually the service mesh has a new version, and then they want to grab that new version. It's like, well, so like at some point having something like Meshery Cloud that that is a single point of reaching out to the internet that like facilitates that type of a thing, or that will connect to a local registry, because a lot of the meshes are released as containers themselves. And so if someone caches to a local, or if they store those images in their local registry, then Meshery could use that. So there's some considerations. And Asuko, I had put down some considerations because we have a user, a bank here in Austin that's wanting to use Meshery. And the user, his name's Polberg, he's in the Slack. He was asking for instructions. So we started to write down some things, and Asuko took and put those into a document. So
Okay.
grab that link. So I see Jubril is on. This Jubril, I know we don't ask you to do enough. You've been getting bored recently. So I'll definitely highlight this air gap deployment design spec, because it touches on some things that you're familiar with. Jubril, did you happen to hear any of what we just discussed?
No, I only caught the part about the bank.
Okay. Yeah, the brief recap is there are certain users that want to deploy Meshery in a non-internet connected environment, and they can do that. They have to do some manual steps to have Meshery be able to perform all of its tasks. And so first we need to just document what those manual steps are, and then we should start to give consideration to making that a little bit easier for them to do. Automating some of those steps or changing it. So that air gap deployment doc starts to outline those.
Could you describe what that looks like?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I will. You know what? I'm going to point you to an issue that does it concisely, and I'll point you to the issue because, to be fair to everybody else, they just heard me ramble on about it for 5 minutes. So I don't want to make anyone suffer needlessly. I'll grab that issue. Yeah, I think you'll find it. Intuitive. It's the first comment in there. So that's the user, Mr. Polberg. He's in our Slack. So if you guys want to talk to him, he just so happens to live in the same city as me. I didn't know him before he became interested in Meshery or what have you. I don't even know how he heard of Meshery. So the things that were top of mind for me was the first thing I was talking about the adapters needing to have a copy of the installation files for a mesh. So that describes it more. The second consideration is like, well, this is more like their issue. We can facilitate it, but the container images for Meshery, if you run Meshery CTL, well, it goes out to Docker Hub and pulls them down. It's like, well, you need to get that software somehow. Somehow they need to download the software. And so we can give them instructions, like if there's anything, like we can provide, at least in Meshery CTL, the ability to, well, I mean, in their environment, they can point to a different registry if they want to. We could also, there's some considerations that we could make to help make some of this easier. The third, and Meshery Cloud can help with both of these things: caching installation files, caching other container images for Meshery. I shouldn't say caching, but I mean being a repository of that. The third thing is Meshery Cloud itself. If you want to use, you can use the local provider with no need for internet. But if you would like to take advantage of some of the things that Meshery Cloud has, then it's free to do so. We just run it as a simple service for everyone today. But those container images are public, and we just need to write down instructions for like how to download those and run them locally. And then that way you can, the one thing about Meshery Cloud right now is when it lets you authenticate, we had to do it kind of cheaply because there's a lot of stuff that we only get to, because it's only because of all of you that show up that like any of this stuff gets done. So we can only get so much done. And in Meshery Cloud, you have all seen that it allows you to socially authenticate. And that was done because it's just faster than having to deal with email addresses and password resets and all the, and then LDAP integration and stuff. But as we go forth, LDAP integration, Active Directory integration, those will be highly called upon features, and rightfully so. And so that's something that we don't intend to build into the local provider for a bunch of reasons. One of the reasons being because if you're using Meshery in a local provider way with a none provider, you're really just using it as an ad hoc tool, something you reach into the toolbox, you pull it out, use it for a point in time, and then you throw it, you turn it off. If you're going to use it in an enterprise that has Active Directory, then that's a different scenario. And so that's for the remote provider for Meshery Cloud. And we would want to expand the protocol support to Active Directory. So those are some of the considerations about what it would be to run Meshery air gapped. And this guy Polberg, I forget his first name. He is entirely fine with just whatever the manual instructions are. He just needs those. He works at a bank. I forget the name of the bank. Nice guy. He's kind of suffering in his environment because he's sort of like, there's a small collection of like the DevOps people or what have you. And everybody else, is holding him back. So.
Yeah.
So if for nothing else, there's a crusade just to help the poor DevOps guy.
Yeah, because he has to set up the VPN or proxy or something like that to have a private registry.
Yeah, he's already got it. Yeah. And I think, and they do that today, which is in part why they would be okay with just instructions on like, where are these things and what do I need to pull? And that'll answer a significant portion of their questions. But not all of them. So. Cool. That was just a kind of top of mind because Asuko is asking for feedback in that air gap deployment doc, and one of us needs to copy my comments from the issue into that doc and sort of engage Asuko in there. And he just put this together a couple of days ago or so. And he's got a couple of suggestions that I think might be bigger than we can bite off. I didn't read the whole thing, but this is a good, I think, for any of you that are on the call that lean into operations and things like this. This is a pretty interesting, set of considerations.
Yeah, I will check it out, that doc also.
The guy who was asking for this, Pulberg, like, so feel free to engage him in our Slack. Like, he's seems like a nice user. We definitely need more users and more users giving feedback. And he'd also highlighted, like he'd given an example of what he was comfortable with. And I'll try to find the doc. He had pointed out that some of you are familiar with Longhorn. Longhorn.io is just another cloud native project. It's for storage. And to install Longhorn on-prem, they have a doc. It's the instructions for air gap deployment. I'm trying to find it. And it's just, some long document that says, here's all the things you got to do. And like, he's accustomed to that. He knows that it's not as easy. but we need to give him what the instructions are. So. Try to find that. But while I'm searching the net for, okay, yeah, here we go. So there's a set of examples for. So, yeah, to all of you that are on this call, this is a medium-sized, semi-juicy like area for you to go make an impact. And I don't think you can really get it wrong to start with. Maybe you provide a bash. Maybe all you do is provide instructions, and it's all manual. Maybe there's a simple bash script. Maybe you're helping identify how some of the other things I was saying in the way in which we could change Meshery to, maybe you want to work to deploy Meshery Cloud locally. Maybe you want to, like all those things are additive and helpful.
Mm-hmm.
So there are two other potential topics for us as everyone absorbs this. The other, one of the other topics is, well, it's Helm Charts. And I think this one is easier than this third one. The third one is more like documentation versioning, and that's kind of, but Helm Charts. So the project itself, Meshery, has a Helm chart, and the Helm chart tends, in the past, has been treated as a second-class citizen, and we all know that no one likes to be treated like that. So we're trying to be more kind to the Meshery Helm chart and have it released, pretty much every time that Meshery is released. The Helm charts are stored within the Meshery repo, the source code for the Helm charts, like they're there, and there's occasionally changes to them. There aren't nearly as many changes to the Helm chart as there are to Meshery itself, but occasionally we add an adapter, or we remove an adapter, or we have an operator, or we have or I don't know, we do other changes. And that, and there's a GitHub action that you can configure to point to your file system location in your repo for where Helm charts are, and it will, every time you invoke the action, it will build the chart, create the artifacts, and publish them to another repo. And the other repo that we have is the meshery.io repo. It's the website meshery.io. It has a public-facing HTTP server where we can publish the Helm chart so that people can just grab it. And if you go to artifacthub.io, I think, you'll find, artifacthub.io. If you search for Meshery, you'll find Meshery's Helm chart. And so there's an open, so the issue here is that we need to make sure that GitHub action to publish the Helm chart frequently, that it's just invoked every time that we make a Meshery release. A new release of the Helm chart should be made as well. And we should just give that chart the same version number as the Meshery version number. And that way there's, no confusion about. And so Asuko was looking into, or was looking into this, and he grabbed a GitHub action, and I think he found that the one that was out there didn't do everything that we needed. So I think he ended up kind of making another one, and he's got it committed to our repo, and it will be invoked whenever there's I think the way it's configured right now is that a new chart release will be made anytime that someone changes the code, the files under /install/charts/Kubernetes or whatever. I think he has that GitHub workflow only to be triggered on detection of changes under those files. And so I went ahead and tried it out a couple of weeks ago when I was just trying to help him advance it along. And yeah, I think that's the one. I think when we get it working, he'll end up merging it into layer 5. If you look in Meshery, there's an open pull request. In which it's the 5th one down. It's CI testing Helm Chart. So I had just opened up a quick small change under that directory. I just like bumped the version of something to test it out. And it ended up, the action associated ended up failing. And I believe that was because of maybe, I think Asuko might have been referencing, well, we can rerun. If you want to click rerun, maybe, I think he was referencing a personal access token that maybe he might have had the wrong reference to the secret.
I see.
I don't recall. But again, this is an area for any one of you who is CI oriented to do some investigation and unable. Or he had the wrong reference to the chart, or
Yeah, maybe.
I think it was fairly obvious. Whatever.
Yeah, or unable to check chart.yml file.
So install Meshery chart. And I don't think that would be the path. If you look inside the code base.
Let me see. Install Meshery. Is that? Oh yeah, the path is wrong. I think.
Yeah.
It's this one. It's all this. Charts path.
What do you think, Vishal? What do you think, man? It's your chance. Jump in there, grab it. Adina, I know you want to make a mark.
You mean with the Helm chart or to publish it?
Yeah, or just to fix the issue that to fix the file reference with the GitHub action.
Okay, that's true. No, but I was finding excuses that I don't know where you publish and blah blah. But you said earlier it's on the Artifact.io, so yeah.
Yeah, there's a rabbit trail in there somewhere, but yeah, it goes over to. And so yeah, Vishal is saying he's interested in the Slack as well, but there's I think that's our culprit, line 34. At least that's our first culprit. So. And
yeah, I think we can change this one to this path.
Eventually, another thing to do is not that. So on line 49, the GitHub actor is Asuko, and like, if you guys can't tell, I'm all about recognizing the work that everyone here does and highlighting folks. In this case, it is a liability to, or like it's we would do well to change it to like a service account, a robot account. Just as a point of order of like, it's a robotic thing that's kicking off and stuff, but Asuko is listed as the one of the maintainers of this and stuff. And so like, you know, it isn't about not recognizing it, it's about making sure that it works. And so,
Right. So Vishal, do you want to work on this one?
Yeah, I'm interested.
Great. Great. So it's okay to work on this same pull request, Lee, or should we create another one?
do your worst, whatever is,
Okay. Okay, sounds good. I will be pending on that too.
okay. Vishal, I can feel the energy, man. I can feel the,
Mhm. Yeah.
Well, Rodolfo, I'm not sure if we have, speaking of energy, I'm not sure if, Alonso, do we have the energy for a Meshery docs versioning? This guy, like, it pains me that your PR has been out there for about as long as my beard is. It's been a while.
Yeah, of course. I think that some things have to be settled so the versioning can be done. There's a lot of alternatives, but the one that we are trying right now will imply that the documents that are being done for each version will be taken on the next version. So the actual documentation, the way that the documents has been updated, it will match only the most recent version, right?
Yes, which I think an alternative way of phrasing what you said, I believe, is that I'll give an example. I'll try to, and that is that if today we were to make the release of Meshery 053, that and by the way, I don't think that we want to actually keep. Okay, let me not digress here. But let's say that we made let's say they made the V060 release. Like, you know, it's a stepwise release. Like, it's a significant thing. Changes have happened. We've added stuff, etc. So part of the release workflow in an ideal world, like, and I don't know why I'm using my hands to describe this, but would snapshot would do a Jekyll build, grab the output of the underscore site folder. It would just basically grab the output of the statically, I hesitate to use the word compiled, but the statically generated website, the docs website, rename the folder to V060, and shove it into a folder underneath the docs folder somewhere, like, and then yep, you'd have a point in time snapshot of the entire site, inclusive of whatever was in the menu and whatever was in the footer and the header, and like for that point in time, which, you know, over time, like, could be a dramatically different looking site. There are problems with that, potential problems with that, but my sense is that the problems with that, you know, like, the problem would be, what would be the problem? What problem would be, a user would be on V0 8.0, the latest release. They want to go back in time to 6.0. And in V0 8.0, like the latest release, they're looking at this doc. It's this nice air-gapped deployment instructions doc. And they're like, oh yeah, this is great. Okay, good. Oh, except we're not ready for 8.0. We actually are more comfortable with 6.0. So I'll go ahead and click the drop down. I'll go to 6.0 and they go and they're looking around and they're like, well, there's no air gapped instructions here. The menu item isn't even there for that reference. Well, like, yeah, because we didn't support it then, or like it wasn't written up then. And like, that's just how it is, you know, or in the footer, it didn't have the link to the YouTube channel because we didn't have one back then or something like that. Like, well, that's just how it is. Like, yeah, that would be the worst of the experiences I think that they would get. On the flip side, if what we versioned, if we didn't take a complete snapshot of the entire site, if what we ended up versioning was just the internal, the guts, the content of not the menu, not the header, not the footer, if we left those as perpetually the same, we would be in the gut, we would be versioning the guts of the actual content, right? The actual. Now the issue becomes in the header, later on, it's like, wow, we have the air gapped document and that's like the most popular thing ever. We need to put that in the header and like have people be able to quickly find that, or we need to call, or it's going to be a link inside the menu on the left. Well, hopefully you guys see where I'm going with this, that you're going to do is something worse. Like if someone goes back in time to 6.0, they're going to be seeing a bunch of broken links. Like at least when they have a different experience, when they go back in time, they won't have broken links and weird stuff going on. They'll just, things will be missing because they weren't present at the time, which is exactly why you version things, which is exactly the point. So, now,
Yeah, I think that this approach, I really like it. And but this has to be a revamp of all the tree of topics on links and navigations and stuff. So prevent that there are not broken links.
yeah, yep, could be. Yeah, there could be some. I think if you thought about it long enough and got clever enough, you might be able to only modify the, yeah, you're right. Alonso, it depends on the highly likely, most likely not worth discussing. There's a chance that you wouldn't have to, but that would only be if we had done really good design in relative menus and or relative hyperlinks. And anyway, to your point, yeah, that's a consideration.
Yeah, but let me think on it. So the way I was approaching it was to generate a lot of documentation sites that were going to be attached to a certain version, and that's it. So the Jekyll engine will be always rendering up accordingly to the logic on the whole site itself. But with this different approach, the only thing that will have to be being taken care of will be that prevent generating a link of a non-existent document of a previous version that was snapshotted in that document that you were saying. Yes, let me think on it and see how to be started with that.
Yeah. If it begins to, like there might be some things that I'm wrong. There might be some unknown issues that actually occur with what I'd said about snapshotting the folders and stuff. So one of the issues is that, and VJ brought this up before, like that, hey, you might run out of disk space that GitHub is giving us, and be like, okay, what we would do is, well, we would not persist the V051, V052, V053. Those would be deleted, and we would just keep V050, V060, only the minor dot zeros, not the incremental, not the 30 incremental in between, is one thing. That's a kind of an issue. Anyway, if it starts to, like, there's a guy in, there's a contributor that had joined not too long ago. His name's Aditya Krishna, and I'll put his, slack his name. He'd been hot. Well, my wife hates it when I use this term. He'd been hot to trot on potentially using Docusaurus instead of Jekyll. And I agree that Docusaurus is more feature rich. And by example, it has the ability to version your documentation. It takes care of this. Like, we don't have to come up with something janky. It does this. And it has, I think, some helpful stuff around API docs and like, it's better. There's two reservations on my part, just solely on me specifically, my individual part, is anything that we do here is nothing's ever, even the easiest of things takes some effort to get right. And like, I can't tell you how many times my plate spills over and I can't assist folks. And so people will start something and then I'll feel, we won't get it done because I'm not there to help. Not that I'm the only one that helps and gets stuff done and stuff. That's very much so not the case. I very much desire for all of you to be making decisions and doing stuff. But my point is that the other issue around it is that, so it's not easy. He was saying he'd do the whole thing. It's like, well, that would be fantastic. There's no way in hell that that's going to ever happen. It's evident from him contributing elsewhere. And I wish he was here because I'm not trying to be rude to him in any way. And he already acknowledged that and stuff. But the point is, the second point is that that's a React-based framework, which is fine technology. It's just different than Jekyll, which means that as Alonso and as Elizabeth and as all the rest of us there's this economies of scope of like, oh, what's the Meshery IO site in? Jekyll. The SMP site, Jekyll. The Get Nighthawk site, Jekyll. Oh, great. You get competent at one and you can go, go around the projects. And Jekyll is not in any way, shape or form better than, like the best. It's like Perl as a language. If any of you know Perl, which I'd be curious if you do, but the reason that it continues to survive, even the authors of the Perl books from O'Reilly, like these individuals are hunchbacked, long-bearded people who are quite wrinkly and old in age because Perl is old, is what I'm trying to say. Why is Perl even still around? Because it's ubiquitous. Like every Linux system, any Unix system you go to has got Perl. So if you want to have an install script, or you need to do some regex, for example, like, man, Perl is there, guaranteed. Like even though it's technically not part of the, it's not part of the kernel. But so point is, that's kind of the same thing around Jekyll. It's not the best. It's been there forever. It's simpler. It's easier to use. Unfortunately, we chose a theme that didn't have versioning in it. Ironically, and actually the other choice here, Alonso, would be to use Hugo, because we're actually literally using the same theme that TensorFlow and Kubernetes.io and others, they're using that same theme. This is a ported theme that we're using from a Hugo theme. And the original Hugo theme actually has versioning supported. And we could move to Hugo, and it's very simple. It's very similar to Jekyll. Like, you don't need to know Go at all. For Jekyll, you end up kind of touching some Ruby, or you get around some Ruby and liquid templating and stuff. And in Hugo, I don't know what the templating is. Hugo's written in Go, but the point is, like, the docs that you're writing, it's just markdown again with front matter variables. And so now I've really expanded up the potential considerations, but I'll list Aditya's name, and there's a Meshery repo. Or I'm sorry, there's a repo in the Layer 5 org. It's called docsng for next generation. And it has the start of a Docusaurus test that this gentleman Aditya was doing. So, yeah. I'll put his name. Now to spell Docusaurus. So Alonso, that doesn't mean you need to go and do something different. I just was calling it out since it's relevant.
Yeah, I think that it is a very good moment to see another alternatives even to Jekyll. Yes, I agree, because we have not now seen some difficulties of how this is going to be a minor, I don't know, struggle in the future with all these GitHub actions trying to automate things and Jekyll being in the way. So that's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. At some point you hit an inflection point. It's like the struggles are just, enough's enough. Like it's time for a whole new framework. So yeah, that's the. So I messaged about him and his name in the Meshery CI channel.
Okay, so I will get in touch with him and see how we can contribute. Okay.
Yep, nice, good, and hey, we don't have to go do DocuSource. I just yeah, good. Somebody to explore with.
I'm curious of something. If we have problems with the space, then do we need to document each version of the API and so on, or just the last one in the front end, and maybe create tags in GitHub for each version and so on, and then we don't. I think I don't understand the context, and that's why I have this proposal.
Yeah, API versioning is a little bit of a separate topic. It's related, but the topic.
Okay, not API versioning. Sorry. What you want to version now?
The docs, the user docs.
The user docs. Okay. And and we have them in the GitHub pages probably, or I don't understand why we need to version them in the site. That's the thing.
VJ, you might have a perspective. Might be able to answer that.
Yes, so I was thinking, that a documentation is part of the application and is part of the source code. And so when you make a change to something, you make a change to the source code, you make a change to the documentation, you make a change to the test. The whole thing goes together. It's one full package. So when you have an issue or PR, you fix the PR, then uh, then you merge it, and then it goes to one release, and then the documentation always stays in sync with the development. Is it what you had in mind?
Adina, does that hit home or?
Yeah.
A different
I think I need to, for the first time, I need something visual. Usually, I'm not a visual person.
Okay, just as an example, the previous one, the air gap, right? So you go to 6.0, air gap is not there. So now somebody has made air gap possible. Okay, so they put in the code changes, and assuming that there are code changes and all the script changes, they put in all the code and all, and they make the documentation, right? And then they check in the whole thing at once. So whenever you make a change, so and if there are tests to go with it, you also check in the tests at the same time, so that there's no part of the project that is like Lee was saying earlier, that is uh, uh, like a lost lost friend or something like that. It is, they all go together. So when you make this change, automatically when they go to that particular version, they know that this air gap is there, and when they go to the previous version, it's not there, and all these things that happen automatically.
Mhm.
Does it
Here's
make sense, Lee?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
here's
Okay, I got it. If you look on the Elastic Search, for example, you have different versions, and then you can see the API in the same way. Same with yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense.
nice. Actually, just even for Alonso, this visual is a kind of a good example of like, well, I had said that Kubernetes is using basically the same theme that that Meshery IO is using, or I'm sorry, docs.meshery IO is using, and you can kind of tell by the same font and then you can really start to tell as you look through here. It's like, wow, yeah, that sort of looks like exactly like Meshery. It's like, yes, that is. They're using Hugo, we're using Jekyll, but now their version of the theme actually has I think their theme inclusive to the theme I think has support inherently for versions, but even at what we're looking at, it's like this is a little bit weird, this could be something to look at, but it's like you are viewing the documentation for, and so if we go to, if as a user we go over and we're like, how do we spin up a pod, it'll have this up there the whole time, and if that command ever changed, then that's why you would want to know, like, hey, there's a different version. Interestingly, in the URL, oh, here it is. You see this URL up here? So they're using this trick, which is something we could do. They're doing a subdomain version, such and such. And then when you want to go back to the latest, it's just kubernetes.io/docs. But if you wanted to go to the old stuff, if we went back to v17, then so that's another way of like, okay, hey, we published a totally separate site, a snapshot of it. So the thing I was sort of hand waving over, or that I didn't include, the thing that I said there might be some unknowns there, like one for like, look at this. First of all, they've got a broken link because some of this stuff is kind of hard to do. They also had to include the use of DNS to help with this.
Is it? I mean, it would be really nice if you have some tool that builds a current version from GitHub. I mean, for a particular version for GitHub, and generates the documentation real time.
Oh, from the code, you mean? Yeah, yes. I think for the APIs, I think that's what we're shooting for. For the rest of the code, for the APIs, because they're so structured and you can like, like this, you'd never be able to include a picture from the code, or if you did, you'd have to be like, it's like what you can do that, and what you end up with is with the horrible Java docs or the horrible Go docs, like the auto-generated stuff that just, if you're a user, forget this. You are not reading. Only developers, and then even at that, only some developers come to read this. But that's the problem, is because it's auto-generated from the code. I mean, the great thing is it has to be. There's no way you can do that for a language like and if it's an API, like, yeah, you want it auto-generated and stuff, because who's there looking at it? It's a developer who wants to know, like. But for the user-facing docs, it's like, well, even here, this is the user-facing Go docs, and these are not auto-generated. These are handwritten. They're still not pretty, but cool. So we have an air gap doc. Got a couple of people interested in Helm Charts. Got Alonso's head spinning around versions. And you know, like for Adina and Vijay and everybody, that these are open challenges for anybody to go, you know, latch onto and figure out. Well,
Yeah,
for my
sounds
part,
good. Yeah, is there anyone that want to comment anything else? So if not, we are. Sorry, Adina.
Oh, I wanted only the camera, but I put the mic also. Well, I do have an idea. I think we have quite some bots, right, with the pipelines. So we can have also like doc or whatever, container placeholder group, whatever, for the bots in the pipeline. Maybe people that will join might be interesting on whatever bots we are gonna put next, or need some. I think we have more than one bot for sure, right?
just to
We have one for release.
Oh yeah, okay. Just to clarify, yeah, you're not talking about like Slack bots, but yeah, no, there's a number.
No, not about Slack bots. About what automated.
Yeah, there's a number of workflows, and then those workflows will call. It's confusing because the language is like, but we have a number of workflows that get triggered based on different events, and within the workflow, they may refer to any number of GitHub actions. But and yes, and there's lots of things to do within them. Like one of the things that I think is going to upset Rodolfo in the best of ways is I bet if we make a release right now, we don't get auto-generated and auto-published release notes. like I bet we've got a bug lurking. And so Adina, your point was to try to generate some easy, simple issues for people to pick up on, or a roadmap for what those are, or
Yeah, but anything, it's good. Just that the last time, or I don't know what meeting was that you want something more often, like the deployment. I think it's actually releasing more often.
totally. I get anxious.
Like
We haven't released in a month. I start to get anxious. Yeah. Yeah, I think to help with that is something that Rodolfo had done, which is initiated the framework, the use of Cypress as is one of the more helpful things toward raising confidence level of just making releases more often. And there's a lot of tests, or there's more tests to be written for Cypress. That's kind of a nice thing because you don't have to go pick up Golang or go pick up I don't know any a language per se. You do have to look at the code and pick out a few things, but even I could do it. Is what I'm saying. So, well, shoot, I'm stressed out. I need to go approve Linkerd's graduation. I'm getting pounded by the TOC. So,
Okay,
Good.
sounds good.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Thank you
Thank you, everyone. See you the next one.
Thank you. See you.
bye. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.